I arrived at my parents' annual 4th of July BBQ with my 8-year-old daughter Emma, expecting the usual family chaos and decent burgers. What I witnessed instead changed everything between us forever. My parents surprised my brother Jake's twin 10-year-old boys with a fully paid Disneyland vacation package, airfare, hotel accommodations, park tickets, and spending money totaling $3,600. Mom gushed endlessly about creating magical childhood memories that last forever. Emma quietly asked why she never gets trips like her cousins. My parents dismissed her with a day-old crushed cupcake from the refrigerator, telling her she doesn't need fancy things to be happy. My stomach dropped as this pattern of blatant favoritism hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. The shock paralyzed me as I watched Emma carefully pick crumbs from the damaged dessert, trying to salvage something edible from what looked like roadkill. Extended family members surrounded Jake's family, congratulating them enthusiastically while completely ignoring Emma's existence. She stood there holding her pathetic consolation prize invisible to everyone except me. I'm Adam, 32 years old, working as an accountant at a mid-size firm downtown. After my divorce 3 years ago, I've been raising Emma mostly alone while working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Her mother, Sarah, moved to Portland for some tech startup opportunity, sending minimal child support when she remembers. We live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the south side, and I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic that Emma named Rusty because of the spots near the wheel wells. Despite our tight budget, I recently started contributing $400 monthly to my parents' mortgage after Dad's early retirement from the Postal Service. I've also been covering their cell phone bill for 2 years now, which runs about $120 monthly. Mom claimed they needed help just temporarily while adjusting to fixed income living. Being the responsible son, I agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, Jake is the golden child who married Courtney, a successful real estate agent who drives a brand new BMW and wears designer clothes to family gatherings. Their twin boys, Tyler and Trevor, receive constant gifts from my parents: new bicycles last spring, gaming systems for their birthday private soccer lessons every Saturday that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Emma gets hand-me-down clothes from garage sales and generic brand toys for Christmas that break within weeks. My parents never miss an opportunity to praise Jake's tremendous success while criticizing my poor life choices. According to them, my divorce proved I can't handle responsibility, and my financial struggles demonstrate lack of ambition. They conveniently forget that Jake inherited Dad's vintage car collection when he turned 25, while I received a lecture about earning my own way in life. The favoritism became impossible to ignore as I watched Tyler and Trevor open elaborate gift bags filled with Disney merchandise, matching Mickey Mouse ears, and prepaid credit cards for vacation spending. Emma clutched her demolished cupcake chocolate frosting smeared on her fingers, trying to smile politely while her heart shattered. The contrast felt deliberately cruel. Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother, approached me near the picnic table, where I stood frozen in disbelief. He's always been the straight shooter in our family, never afraid to speak uncomfortable truths that others avoid discussing. "Adam, we need to talk privately," he said quietly, glancing around to ensure nobody overheard. "This situation has gone too far, and you deserve to know what's really happening behind closed doors." We walked to the far corner of the backyard, away from the celebration and laughter. Robert's expression looked grim as he prepared to deliver news that would fundamentally alter my understanding of family dynamics. "Your parents took out a $15,000 loan against their house 6 months ago." He revealed, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're using that money to fund Jake's family lifestyle, plus whatever you're contributing monthly. They're financially overextended, but refuse to admit they're drowning in debt." The words hit me like ice water. Every dollar I'd been sending to help with their temporary difficulties was actually subsidizing my brother's luxury expenses, while my own daughter received table scraps. I realized that my monthly contributions weren't helping my parents survive. They were enabling them to play favorites on a scale I never imagined possible. Robert continued. I've tried talking sense into them, but they insist Jake's children deserve better opportunities because of their superior potential. It's sickening, Adam. Emma is every bit as deserving as those boys, but they treat her like an afterthought. The revelation crushed me more than I expected. I'd been working overtime, sacrificing date nights, and personal time skipping meals to stretch our budget further, all so I could help my parents maintain their dignity during retirement. Instead, I'd been unknowingly financing discrimination against my own child. I approached my parents in the kitchen while Emma played with her cousins in the backyard, though I noticed Tyler and Trevor excluded her from their new handheld games. The kitchen smelled like charcoal and potato salad, normal summer scents that contrasted sharply with the turmoil churning in my stomach. Mom, Dad, we need to discuss the Disneyland gift. I began calmly, trying to maintain composure despite my racing heartbeat. I'm concerned about the obvious disparity between how you treat Emma versus Tyler and Trevor. Patricia immediately became defensive, her voice rising an octave as she gestured dramatically with a spatula. Those boys need confidence building after their difficult year at school, she declared. They're struggling with math and social situations. A magical vacation will boost their self-esteem. What about Emma's self-esteem? I asked. She's watching her cousins receive thousands of dollars in gifts while she gets damaged leftovers from your refrigerator. Ronald interrupted before Patricia could respond, his face reddening with indignation. You're being jealous and petty, Adam. Maybe if you'd made better choices in life, you could afford nice things for Emma yourself. We can't be responsible for your financial limitations. This isn't about money, I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. This is about treating all grandchildren fairly and equally. Patricia's expression turned cold as she launched into character assassination mode. Maybe you should focus on finding Emma a proper mother figure, instead of complaining about our generosity towards successful family members. That poor child needs stability, not a bitter single father who resents his brother's achievements. Ronald nodded emphatically, adding fuel to the fire. Your divorce proves you can't handle responsibility. Jake built a stable marriage and provides excellent opportunities for his children. Why should we pretend Emma deserves identical treatment when her circumstances are clearly inferior? Their words stung worse than physical blows. I'd been supporting them financially for years, sacrificing my own comfort, and Emma's opportunities only to discover they viewed us as charity cases, unworthy of equal consideration. Jake entered the kitchen at that moment, his smugness visible from across the room. What's all the drama about? He asked, grabbing another beer from the cooler. Adam's upset about the Disneyland trip, Patricia explained. He thinks we should spend equal money on all grandchildren regardless of their family situations or potential. Jake laughed dismissively. Come on, bro. Mom and Dad are just being practical. Tyler and Trevor have opportunities ahead of them. They're in advanced programs playing competitive sports, building college applications already. Emma's sweet, but let's be realistic about different trajectories. Courtney joined our growing confrontation, wine glass in hand, wearing a satisfied smile that suggested she'd been waiting for this moment. Single-father households statistically produce children with lower academic achievement and behavioral problems, she stated matter-of-factly. We're simply investing resources where they'll generate the highest returns. My hands clenched into fists as I struggled to process the casual cruelty of their statements. These people were supposed to love Emma unconditionally, yet they spoke about her like she was defective merchandise. You're talking about an 8-year-old child, I said through gritted teeth. She hasn't done anything to deserve second-class treatment except have divorced parents. Nobody's treating anyone poorly, Jake insisted. Mom and Dad are generous with everyone. Besides, you know they help you out financially too. I stared at him in confusion. What are you talking about? Jake's expression shifted slightly, suggesting he'd revealed something unintended. You know the monthly allowance they give us both. $800 for me, $400 for you. We're both adults getting parental support. The room fell silent except for the humming refrigerator. Patricia's face went pale, as she realized Jake had just exposed their deception. I wasn't receiving any allowance. I was giving them money which they were funneling directly to Jake's family. "Jake," Patricia said sharply, "you misunderstood the arrangement." "No, I didn't," Jake replied, looking genuinely confused. "You've been giving me $800 monthly for 3 years now. You said Adam was getting $400 because his situation was different. I assumed he knew about both arrangements." The truth crashed over me like a tsunami. Not only had my parents been redistributing my contributions to Jake's family, but they'd been lying to him about the source of funds. Jake genuinely believed our parents were supporting both of us equally, when in reality I was subsidizing his lifestyle, while Emma went without basic necessities. "Is that true?" I asked, staring directly at my parents. "Have you been giving Jake $800 monthly, while I've been sending you $400? Patricia tried to deny everything, stumbling over explanations that made no sense. But the damage was irreversible. Jake's accidental revelation had exposed a level of financial manipulation that crossed every boundary of decency and trust. The kitchen atmosphere became suffocating as the full scope of my parents' deception emerged piece by piece. Jake stood there looking increasingly uncomfortable as he realized his casual comment had detonated a family crisis. "All right, fine," Ronald finally admitted, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "We help Jake more because his family has greater financial needs. Private school tuition for 2 children, mortgage payments on a larger house vehicle, expenses for a growing family. You're a single man with basic needs." "Greater financial needs," I repeated incredulously. "I'm raising Emma alone on an accountant's salary, while Jake's married to a real estate agent who probably earns more than both of us combined." Courtney laughed bitterly. "My income supports our lifestyle, not charity cases. Your parents recognize that investing in successful families benefits everyone long-term." Patricia nodded enthusiastically. "We gave Jake the down payment assistance when they bought their house, $25,000, because we knew he'd use it responsibly. We've been paying Tyler and Trevor's private school tuition for 2 years now, $1,800 monthly for each child, because education is the foundation of success." "You bought them that minivan too," Ronald added proudly. "Still making payments, but Jake's family needed reliable transportation for the boys' activities." My mind reeled as I calculated the staggering amounts. Down payment assistance, private school tuition vehicle payments, monthly allowances. My parents had invested well over $60,000 in Jake's family during the past 3 years. Meanwhile, Emma received cast-off clothing and broken toys, while I worked myself to exhaustion trying to support everyone. The sound of children's laughter drifted in from the backyard, but I knew Emma wasn't part of that joy. Through the window, I could see her sitting alone on the porch swing, while Tyler and Trevor played with their new electronic gadgets. "Emma, sweetie, come here for a minute," I called out, unable to bear watching her isolation any longer. She ran inside eagerly, hoping perhaps the adults had remembered her existence. "What's wrong, Daddy? You look upset." Before I could respond, Tyler bounded through the door, waving his new Nintendo Switch triumphantly. "Look what Grandma and Grandpa got us for Disneyland," he announced. "Trevor and I are going to play games on the airplane." Emma's face fell as she stared at the expensive gaming device probably worth more than our monthly grocery budget. "That's nice," she whispered, clutching her crushed cupcake remains. "Can I try playing?" Emma asked hopefully. "No way," Tyler replied dismissively. "Mom says poor kids break expensive stuff because they're not used to nice things." The words hung in the air, like poison gas. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she processed the cruel rejection. I watched my daughter's heart break in real time, while my family stood around acting like this was perfectly acceptable behavior. "Tyler, apologize right now," I demanded, my voice shaking with controlled fury. "For what?" Courtney interjected, moving protectively in front of her son. "He's just repeating what I taught him about being careful with valuable possessions. Maybe if Emma had nicer things at home, she'd understand how to treat quality items properly." Extended family members began gathering in the kitchen, drawn by raised voices and obvious tension. Aunt Linda arrived first, followed by Uncle Robert and several cousins. The crowd made the space feel claustrophobic. "What's all the commotion about?" Aunt Linda asked, looking around nervously. Uncle Robert stepped forward, his expression grim. "Adam just discovered how Patricia and Ronald have been redistributing his financial contributions to fund Jake's family, while Emma gets nothing." Murmurs of shock rippled through the assembled relatives. Most family members had no idea about the complex financial arrangements happening behind closed doors. "That can't be true," Cousin Mark said, shaking his head. "Uncle Ron and Aunt Pat would never play favorites like that." "I'm afraid it's completely accurate," Robert confirmed. "I've been watching this unfold for months, trying to convince them to treat all grandchildren equally." Grandmother Rose, Patricia's 84-year-old mother, pushed through the crowd using her walking cane. Despite her age, her mind remained sharp as a tack, and she'd been observing family dynamics with growing concern. "Patricia Ann, explain yourself this instant," she commanded, in the voice that had terrified my mother throughout childhood. "Are you telling me you've been stealing money from one grandson to spoil another?" "It's not stealing, Mother," Patricia protested weakly. "We're helping where help is needed most." "Horse manure," Grandmother Rose snapped. "That little girl sits in the corner at every family gathering while you shower those boys with gifts. I've kept quiet too long, but this ends today." The room erupted in arguments as family members chose sides. Some defended my parents' right to spend money however they wished, while others expressed outrage at the blatant favoritism. Emma pressed closer to my leg, frightened by the adult conflict swirling around her. Courtney, emboldened by several glasses of wine, decided to deliver the final blow. "Since everyone's being so honest, let me thank Adam publicly for sponsoring our children's superior lifestyle. Your monthly contributions have been very helpful, though. You really should work harder if you want Emma treated equally." The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking wall clock. Every family member stared in shock as Courtney's words sank in. Even Jake looked mortified by his wife's cruelty. "Courtney, that's enough," he said quietly, but the damage was done. Patricia and Ronald remained silent, neither defending me nor condemning Courtney's vicious comments. Their silence spoke louder than any words could have. They were perfectly content letting Courtney humiliate me in front of our entire extended family. I felt Emma's small hand slip into mine as she looked up at me with confused, frightened eyes. "Daddy, why is everyone yelling? Did I do something wrong?" Looking down at my daughter's innocent face, surrounded by family members who treated her like a burden, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. We deserved better than this. Emma deserved family members who celebrated her existence instead of tolerating it. "No, sweetheart," I said softly, picking her up. "You didn't do anything wrong. We're going home now." The drive home passed in silence, except for Emma's occasional sniffles from the back seat. She still clutched the remains of that crushed cupcake, unwilling to throw away what little she'd received. Each sniffle felt like a dagger to my heart, as I realized how much damage my family's cruelty had inflicted on an innocent child. "Daddy, did I say something bad to make everyone mad?" Emma asked as we pulled into our apartment complex parking lot. I turned around to face her, my chest tightening at the sight of chocolate smears on her cheek and confusion in her eyes. Emma listened to me very carefully. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Sometimes grown-ups make terrible choices, and that's not your fault. I promise you, we're going to be okay." After getting Emma settled with her favorite stuffed animals and a Disney movie, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop coffee growing cold as I began researching every financial connection between my family and myself. The scope of their deception ran deeper than I'd initially realized. First, I pulled up bank statements from the past 18 months, highlighting every automatic transfer to my parents' accounts. The mortgage assistance phone bills, insurance payments, and random emergency requests totaled over $8,000. Money I'd scraped together by working overtime, skipping meals, and postponing Emma's dental care. Next came the shocking discovery that made my blood run cold. My parents had been using my credit card for online purchases without permission. Amazon orders for Tyler and Trevor's sports equipment, restaurant bills for family dinners. I didn't attend even clothing purchases for Jake's family. They'd added my card to their accounts months ago when I'd helped with an emergency grocery run, then continued using it for their own purposes. The unauthorized charges totaled over $4,000 in 6 months. Every time I'd noticed unusual activity, they'd provided explanations about mix-ups or temporary emergencies that I'd accepted because I trusted them. Now I realized they'd been systematically stealing from Emma and me to fund Jake's lifestyle. But the worst discovery came when I logged into my Amazon account. They'd given Jake access to my Prime account, and he'd been ordering freely. Toys for his boys' household items, even electronics. The order history showed hundreds of dollars in purchases shipped directly to Jake's address, charged to my credit card. I spent the next hour screenshot documenting every unauthorized transaction, every lie, every manipulation. The evidence painted a picture of financial abuse that went far beyond family favoritism. They'd been committing actual fraud. My hands shook as I photographed text messages where my parents had promised their financial needs were temporary, and they'd pay back every penny. Messages where they claimed Jake was struggling and needed family support. Messages where they assured me Emma was loved equally, and I was imagining favoritism. I recorded a video message to myself, explaining the entire situation in detail for potential legal purposes. My voice cracked as I described watching Emma's heartbreak at the BBQ, but I needed documentation of my emotional state and thought process before taking drastic action. Around midnight, I called my ex-wife Sarah in Portland. Despite our divorce, she'd always been reasonable about co-parenting issues, and I needed someone objective to hear this story. "Adam, it's late. Is Emma okay?" she answered on the second ring. "Emma's fine, but we have a family problem." I explained then, spent 20 minutes detailing the day's revelations. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally making sounds of disgust or disbelief. When I finished, she was quiet for several moments. "Adam, that's not family drama. That's financial abuse. Emma's my daughter too, and I'm furious that your parents treated her like garbage. You need to protect both of you immediately." Her support surprised me. Sarah and I had our differences, but she understood unfairness when she heard it. I called Uncle Robert next, knowing he'd witnessed everything firsthand. He picked up despite the late hour. "I was expecting your call," he said. "What they did today was unforgivable. Your grandmother is livid. She's already talking about changing her will to exclude Patricia if this doesn't get resolved properly." "I need to know I have family support if this gets ugly," I told him. "You have mine 100%. Emma deserves better, and so do you." My final call went to Marcus, a member of my divorced father's support group, who dealt with financial manipulation from his ex-wife's family. He'd warned me months ago to document everything and protect my assets. "Brother, you've been way too generous with people who don't respect you," he said bluntly. "Cut them off completely and let them face consequences. Emma's watching how you handle this. Show her that self-respect matters." By 2 a.m, I'd built a comprehensive plan for financial separation. But as I reviewed bank statements one more time, I discovered something that changed everything from family dispute to federal crime. Hidden in my credit report was an unauthorized credit card I'd never opened. The address matched my parents' house, but the name was mine. They'd used my social security number from tax documents I'd shared to open fraudulent accounts. The balance showed $4,800 in charges, all for Jake's family expenses. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My parents hadn't just favored one grandchild over another, they'd committed identity theft. This was a federal crime that could result in prison time. The family BBQ dispute had just become a criminal investigation. Sleep became impossible as I realized the full implications. My parents had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. They'd stolen my identity to fund discrimination against their own granddaughter. Emma deserved justice, and I was going to make sure she received it. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I prepared to systematically dismantle every financial connection between my family and myself. Emma slept late after our traumatic Saturday, giving me time to implement phase 1 of my plan. I started with the automatic transfers, canceling every recurring payment to my parents' accounts. The $400 mortgage assistance monthly phone bill coverage, shared streaming service subscriptions, and insurance policy payments, all terminated with immediate effect. Each cancellation felt like cutting chains that had bound me to their manipulation. Next came removing my payment methods from every shared account or service. I deleted my credit card from their Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus subscriptions that Jake's family used heavily. I removed myself from their car insurance policy, their Amazon Prime account, and their Costco membership that had been charged to my card monthly. Changing passwords proved therapeutic, as I locked them out of accounts they'd been accessing freely. Banking apps, credit monitoring services, shopping platforms, even my work email, where they'd been sending themselves tax documents. Everything got new passwords with two-factor authentication. I spent an hour on the phone with credit bureaus, placing fraud alerts on all my accounts, and freezing my credit reports to prevent any additional unauthorized accounts. The representatives were helpful once I explained the identity theft situation, providing case numbers and documentation for law enforcement. Emma woke around 10, shuffling into the kitchen, wearing her favorite pajamas, with unicorns on them. She climbed into my lap while I worked, still processing yesterday's events. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" she asked quietly. "No, sweetheart. We're fixing things so we can be happier," I assured her, kissing the top of her head. Monday and Tuesday passed normally on the surface. I went to work. Emma attended summer day camp. We had dinner and watched movies together. Underneath, I felt anxious anticipation, knowing the financial avalanche was about to begin. The bomb exploded Wednesday evening when my parents' mortgage payment bounced. My $400 had been covering their monthly shortfall for 8 months. Without that cushion, their fixed income couldn't bridge the gap. Thursday morning brought the phone service suspension. $120 monthly for unlimited family plans became unaffordable when I stopped subsidizing their communications. Tyler and Trevor lost their gaming capabilities while my parents lost contact with extended family. By Thursday afternoon, their car insurance payment failed, automatically suspending coverage on both vehicles. They couldn't legally drive without insurance, effectively trapping them at home until the situation got resolved. Thursday evening delivered the final blow as automatic utility payments got rejected across the board. Electric, gas, water, and trash services all required immediate payment or faced disconnection within 24 hours. Patricia called Thursday night around 9 o'clock, her voice confused and slightly panicked. "Adam, honey, we're having some technical difficulties with our bank accounts. Several payments bounced today, and we can't figure out what happened." I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the conversation I'd been rehearsing for days. "Mom, I discontinued all financial support effective immediately. You'll need to cover your own expenses going forward." The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. When Patricia finally responded, her voice had transformed into something I barely recognized. "What do you mean, discontinued? You can't just abandon us without warning. We depend on that money for basic survival." "The same way Emma depended on fair treatment from her grandparents," I replied calmly. "You made choices about priorities, and now I'm making mine." "This is about that silly Disneyland argument, Adam. You're being ridiculously dramatic over nothing." "It's about the fraudulent credit card you opened in my name," I said, letting the words sink in. "Identity theft is a federal crime, Mom. The bank's fraud division will be contacting you soon." The line went dead immediately. Friday morning brought a certified letter from my bank's investigation unit that changed everything exponentially. They'd frozen all accounts connected to my Social Security number, pending fraud investigation. This affected not only my parents' accounts, but also Jake's joint account with them that they'd been using to distribute monthly allowances. Jake called me before 8 a.m., his voice frantic and desperate. "Adam, what the hell did you do?" Our accounts are frozen, credit cards declined. Courtney can't access anything. She's threatening divorce if this affects her business deals. I reported identity theft to the authorities. I explained matter-of-factly. The investigation expanded beyond what I expected. Identity theft. What are you talking about? I spent 10 minutes explaining the unauthorized credit card, the forged applications, the systematic fraud that had funded his family's lifestyle. Jake's protests grew weaker as evidence mounted. I had no idea they were doing illegal stuff, he insisted. I thought they just had extra money from Dad's pension improvements. Your ignorance doesn't change the facts, Jake. You've been receiving stolen money for 3 years. How do I fix this? Courtney's already talking to lawyers about protecting her assets. You cooperate with federal investigators and hope they believe your innocence. I told him before hanging up. The weekend erupted into chaos as the full scope of my parents' financial house of cards collapsed spectacularly. Their comfortable retirement lifestyle built on lies and fraud crumbled within 72 hours. Saturday morning arrived with Jake pounding on my apartment door at 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually pristine appearance had deteriorated into wrinkled clothes and uncombed hair, while his eyes showed the wild desperation of someone watching their world collapse. Adam, please, you have to help me understand what's happening, he begged, as I reluctantly let him inside. Courtney moved out last night. Took the boys to her mother's house and won't return my calls. She thinks I've been lying about our financial situation. Emma appeared in the hallway, wearing her weekend clothes, curious about the visitor, but smart enough to sense adult tension. I sent her to her room to play, while Jake and I talked in the kitchen. The bank investigators want to interview me. Monday morning. Jake continued, slumping into a chair. They're asking about money sources, spending patterns, whether I knew about fraudulent accounts. I honestly thought Mom and Dad were just generous grandparents. I poured coffee for both of us, studying my brother's genuine distress. Despite everything, I believed his claims of ignorance about the illegal activities. Jake had always been self-centered and oblivious, but not typically criminal. The unauthorized credit card in my name has almost $5,000 in charges, I explained. All for expenses related to your family. Tyler's baseball equipment, Trevor's piano lessons, restaurant meals when you visited them. They used my identity to fund your lifestyle. Jake's face went pale as understanding dawned. The boys' private school tuition payments. Are those connected to this somehow? Probably. The investigators will trace every dollar back to its source. If they find more fraudulent accounts or forged documents, this becomes much bigger than family drama. Before Jake could respond, my parents arrived at my apartment complex, their desperation visible even through the window. Patricia looked haggard and frightened, while Ronald appeared angry and defiant. They'd obviously spent the night arguing about damage control strategies. We need to talk, Ronald announced as I opened the door. This situation has gotten completely out of hand. You're right, I agreed. Identity theft usually does get out of hand quickly. They entered my living room like condemned prisoners approaching execution, their usual confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Patricia kept wringing her hands while Ronald's jaw muscles twitched with suppressed rage. We never meant for things to go this far. Patricia began, tears streaming down her cheeks. The credit card was supposed to be temporary assistance until our financial situation improved. Temporary assistance, I repeated incredulously. You stole my identity to discriminate against your own granddaughter. There's nothing temporary about federal crimes. Ronald exploded with characteristic defensiveness. We were helping family members who needed support. Jake's children have opportunities that require investment. We made practical decisions based on realistic assessments. You made criminal decisions based on favoritism and lies, I countered. Emma deserves the same love and opportunities as any other grandchild. Jake tried to mediate between us, but his position was hopeless. Maybe we can work something out privately. Keep lawyers and investigators out of family business. It's too late for that, I told them. The bank's fraud division has already involved federal authorities. This isn't family business anymore. It's criminal prosecution territory. My phone rang with an unknown number, and I answered to find FBI Special Agent Jennifer Walsh from the Financial Crimes Unit. Her voice was professional, but serious, as she requested an immediate meeting. Mr. Thompson, our investigation into your identity theft case has uncovered additional victims and potential federal violations. Can you come to our field office this afternoon? I agreed to the 2 o'clock appointment, my heart racing, as I realized the scope was expanding beyond my family situation. After ending the call, I looked at my parents' terrified faces. That was the FBI. Apparently, your fraud extends beyond stealing from me. Patricia collapsed into my couch, sobbing uncontrollably. We only borrowed from the Hendersons next door, and maybe the Johnsons down the street. Everyone gets confused about financial paperwork sometimes. You've been running identity theft schemes on multiple elderly neighbors. Jake asked, his voice hollow with disbelief. Ronald tried to minimize their crimes. We helped people consolidate their bills and manage their accounts more efficiently. Sometimes paperwork gets mixed up between households. The truth was even worse than I'd imagined. My parents hadn't just stolen from me to spoil Jake's family. They'd been operating a systematic fraud ring targeting vulnerable elderly neighbors. The BBQ favoritism had been funded by criminal enterprise. Sunday evening brought news that shattered Jake's remaining stability. Courtney filed separation papers, citing irreconcilable differences and financial deception. She'd frozen their joint accounts and moved the twins permanently to her mother's house pending divorce proceedings. She won't let me see Tyler and Trevor, Jake confessed during a late-night phone call. Her lawyer says I'm financially compromised and potentially criminally involved. My own children think I'm a criminal. Uncle Robert called with updates from extended family members who were distancing themselves from the scandal. Cousins canceled holiday plans. Aunts and uncles avoided phone calls, and several relatives had contacted lawyers about protecting their own financial information. Your grandmother Rose is furious beyond words, Robert reported. She's threatening to disinherit Patricia completely and leave everything to you and Emma instead. She feels betrayed by her own daughter's criminal behavior. Aunt Linda reached out Sunday night to express her shock and support. I witnessed the favoritism for years, but never imagined it involved federal crimes. Emma deserves so much better than what they put her through. By Sunday evening, the full scope of destruction was becoming clear. My parents faced potential federal prosecution. Jake's marriage was collapsing. His relationship with his children was severed, and extended family relationships were permanently damaged. The comfortable family dynamic that had existed for decades was irreversibly shattered. Patricia attempted one final manipulation, showing up at my apartment Monday morning before I left for the FBI meeting. She looked fragile and desperate as she made her last appeal. Adam, please consider Emma's future. If we go to prison, she'll grow up knowing her grandparents are criminals. Think about the trauma you're causing that innocent child. I looked at this woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me right from wrong, who was now trying to use my daughter's well-being to escape consequences for crimes she'd committed against that same child. Emma will grow up knowing that people who love her fight for fairness and justice, I replied. She'll learn that criminal behavior has consequences even when family members are involved. That's a valuable lesson. As I drove to the FBI field office that Monday morning, I reflected on how a simple family BBQ had exposed a criminal conspiracy that affected multiple victims across our neighborhood. Standing up for Emma's dignity had accidentally revealed my parents' systematic fraud operation targeting vulnerable elderly residents. The meeting with Agent Walsh confirmed my worst fears. My parents had used similar tactics against at least 6 other families, stealing identities and opening fraudulent accounts to fund their comfortable retirement lifestyle. They faced multiple federal charges carrying potential prison sentences. Justice was coming, but the cost to our family would be enormous. 3 months later, I stood in my apartment kitchen, watching Emma blow out 9 candles on her birthday cake, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated her existence. The transformation in our lives since that terrible 4th of July BBQ felt miraculous in its completeness. The legal proceedings had concluded with surprising efficiency once federal investigators discovered the full scope of my parents' crimes. They pleaded guilty to identity theft, credit fraud, and elder abuse charges in exchange for reduced sentences. Patricia received 18 months probation with community service requirements, while Ronald got 2 years probation and restitution orders, totaling over $30,000 to various victims. They were forced to sell their house immediately to pay restitution, moving into a modest senior apartment complex on the other side of town. The financial investigation revealed they owed victims far more than they could repay, leaving them essentially bankrupt in their 70s. Jake's situation improved gradually after investigators determined he was genuinely unaware of his parents' criminal activities. The bank unfroze his accounts once they verified he was an unknowing beneficiary rather than an active participant. However, his marriage to Courtney ended permanently despite his cooperation with authorities. "The kids and I need stability," Courtney explained during their final mediation session. "I can't trust financial decisions to someone whose family commits federal crimes." Jake received joint custody of Tyler and Trevor, but had to start completely over financially. Without parental subsidies, he moved into a modest townhouse and found a new job with better pay but longer hours. The adjustment was difficult, but it forced him to become genuinely independent for the first time in his adult life. The relationship between Jake and myself began healing slowly once he understood the extent of favoritism Emma had endured. He'd been so accustomed to privileged treatment that he'd never recognized how badly his children had treated their cousin. "I'm ashamed of what Tyler said about poor kids breaking expensive things," Jake admitted during one of our reconciliation conversations. "Courtney taught them to look down on anyone with less money, and I never corrected that attitude." He started making genuine efforts to build relationships with Emma, bringing Tyler and Trevor for weekend visits where all 3 children were treated equally. The boys gradually learned different values about kindness and inclusivity that they'd never experienced in their previous privileged bubble. My financial recovery exceeded my expectations once restitution payments began arriving. The court ordered my parents to repay $12,000 in unauthorized charges, plus legal fees and punitive damages. Combined with money I was no longer sending to subsidize their lifestyle, our budget improved dramatically. I used part of the recovered funds to take Emma on a modest vacation to the San Diego Zoo, something we'd talked about for years, but never thought we could afford. Watching her excitement at seeing real pandas and riding the aerial gondola felt like healing therapy for both of us. "Daddy, this is the best trip ever," she told me as we shared cotton candy near the elephant exhibit. "Thank you for making it happen." "You deserve wonderful experiences, sweetheart. I should have made that happen sooner." Emma's emotional recovery was remarkable once she understood that the adults in her life would fight for fairness and justice. She developed confidence and self-worth that had been damaged by years of watching cousins receive preferential treatment. Her grades improved significantly when I could afford tutoring assistance and educational resources. She made new friends at the better school I could finally afford after moving to a nicer apartment complex. Most importantly, she learned that she deserved respect and equal treatment from people who claimed to love her. The dating aspect of my life improved unexpectedly when I met Jessica, a kindergarten teacher at Emma's school, during a parent-teacher conference. She was impressed by my commitment to protecting Emma's well-being, even when it required difficult family confrontations. Standing up for your daughter against people who were financially supporting you shows incredible integrity, she told me during our 3rd coffee date. Emma is lucky to have a father who puts her needs above family politics. Jessica understood single parenting challenges and appreciated the close bond Emma and I had developed. Their relationship grew naturally, as Jessica never tried to replace Emma's mother, but simply offered friendship and support. Extended family dynamics shifted dramatically in Emma's favor once the truth about financial manipulation became public knowledge. Grandmother Rose, true to her word, revised her will to establish a college trust fund for Emma, while excluding Patricia entirely from inheritance plans. That child endured years of discrimination, while her grandparents committed crimes. Grandmother Rose declared during a family meeting, "She deserves compensation for the emotional damage they caused." Uncle Robert became a positive male role model for Emma, taking her fishing and teaching her practical skills, while treating her with the respect and affection she'd always deserved. Aunt Linda made special efforts to include Emma in cousin activities and birthday parties. "We should have spoken up years ago when we noticed the favoritism," Aunt Linda apologized. "Adults failed to protect you from obvious injustice, and that's inexcusable." The most surprising transformation occurred during Thanksgiving dinner, which I decided to host at my new apartment, rather than continuing old family traditions. I invited people who genuinely cared about Emma's well-being, while excluding those who had enabled discrimination. Jake brought Tyler and Trevor, who had learned to interact respectfully with Emma, after months of guidance about treating all children equally. The boys were initially resistant to sharing attention and resources, but gradually developed genuine affection for their cousin. "Emma's really funny when she does impressions of cartoon characters," Tyler admitted during dessert. "I never noticed before because we were always playing video games." "She taught me how to make friendship bracelets," Trevor added. "I made one for my new friend at school." My parents attempted reconciliation several times, showing up uninvited with apologies and promises to treat Emma better going forward. However, their probation conditions included supervised contact requirements, and I wasn't ready to expose Emma to potential manipulation. Maybe when they complete their community service and demonstrate consistent behavior changes, I told Uncle Robert, "Emma's emotional health is my priority." The legal consequences extended beyond my family to affect the broader community. My parents' fraud victims included elderly neighbors who'd trusted them with financial assistance, only to discover unauthorized accounts and stolen identities. The criminal investigation led to policy changes in local banks regarding account opening procedures for senior citizens. Emma's understanding of justice and fairness matured significantly through witnessing adults face consequences for harmful behavior. She learned valuable lessons about standing up for yourself and others, even when it requires difficult conversations with people in authority positions. "Daddy, why did Grandma and Grandpa do bad things if they knew they might go to jail?" Emma asked one evening as we discussed the situation age-appropriately. "Sometimes adults make selfish choices and convince themselves those choices are justified," I explained. "They forgot that treating people unfairly causes real harm, especially to children who trust them." "Will they ever be nice to me like Uncle Robert and Grandmother Rose are?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise you'll only spend time with people who treat you with kindness and respect. You never have to accept crumbs when you deserve the whole cupcake." The symbolism of that crushed cupcake from the BBQ became a family metaphor for transformation. We'd gone from accepting leftover scraps to demanding full places at the table of people who valued us appropriately. 6 months after the BBQ incident, Emma's confidence had blossomed into leadership qualities that impressed her teachers and classmates. She organized a fundraiser for animal shelters, started a friendship club for new students, and earned academic recognition that filled me with pride. Emma has become remarkably empathetic and inclusive, her teacher reported during spring conferences. She goes out of her way to help children who feel excluded or different. It's unusual for someone her age to demonstrate such emotional intelligence. Those qualities develop directly from experiencing discrimination and watching adults fight for justice on her behalf. Emma learned that fairness requires active effort, not passive hope. As I watched Emma blow out her birthday candles that September evening, surrounded by Uncle Robert, Aunt Linda, Grandmother Rose, Jessica, and even Jake with Tyler and Trevor, I realized how much our lives had improved since demanding equal treatment. The people celebrating Emma's birthday genuinely loved her, respected her, and wanted her to succeed. Nobody questioned her worthiness for affection or opportunities. Everyone contributed to making her day special, without calculating costs or comparing her to other children. "What did you wish for?" Jessica asked as Emma finished with her candles. "I wished for our family to stay happy like this," Emma replied, looking around the room at faces that reflected genuine care and affection. "That's a beautiful wish," Grandmother Rose said, squeezing Emma's hand. "You deserve happiness and love every single day." Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, and Emma was asleep clutching a new book from Uncle Robert, I reflected on the journey from that painful BBQ to this joyful celebration. Standing up for Emma's dignity had cost us relationships with people who never truly valued us anyway. In return, we'd gained self-respect, financial stability, justice for criminal behavior, and deeper connections with family members who appreciated our worth. The greatest gift I'd given Emma wasn't the San Diego vacation, or the nicer apartment, or even the recovered money. I'd taught her that she deserved equal treatment and respect from people who claimed to love her. I'd shown her that sometimes protecting those you love requires difficult, painful decisions that ultimately lead to better outcomes. Emma learned that love isn't measured by expensive gifts, but by consistent care, fairness, and genuine celebration of someone's existence. She discovered that accepting crumbs isn't kindness. It's enabling people to treat you poorly while convincing themselves they're being generous. Most importantly, Emma now understands that she has value simply for being herself, not because of her family's financial status or her parents' marital situation. She learned that true family members fight for fairness and justice rather than tolerating discrimination for the sake of keeping peace. Sometimes the greatest gift parents can give their children is teaching them they deserve respect and equal treatment from everyone in their lives. The crushed cupcake became our symbol of transformation, from accepting whatever scraps others offered to demanding our rightful place at tables where we're genuinely welcomed and valued. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she looked up at me with bright, confident eyes that showed no trace of the sadness I'd seen at that terrible BBQ. "Daddy, I'm glad we stood up for ourselves," she said softly. "Even though it was scary, everything turned out better." "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Sometimes being brave leads to the best possible outcomes." The journey from that painful 4th of July to this peaceful birthday celebration taught us both that fairness is worth fighting for, justice sometimes requires sacrifice, and love should never require accepting less than we deserve. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family peace and standing up for what's right? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming difficult family situations. Share this with anyone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves or their children. Thank you for listening to our journey, and remember, you deserve to be treated with fairness and respect by everyone in your life, especially the people who claim to love you most.